I always wanted to serve on a jury.
I'm really super excited to be here, so I really appreciate having me. I'm looking forward to it.
I want to give a big shout out to the 13th Jury Podcast and Brandi.
Yeah, I applaud you guys. Keep doing what you're doing.
And then I just look to the jury, and it's sort of like, look.
Hey, if you're bored of work, come pop in and say, hey, want some coffee?
You are a ray of sunshine, and I love what you've done with your YouTube channel.
Hi, y'all. Welcome. My name is Brandi Churchwell, and this is 13th Juror Podcast and Live Stream, where I cover all the latest in true crime and high-profile court cases across the country. So for those who aren't familiar with the disappearance of wealthy Connecticut mother of five Jennifer Dulos, this is a case that media began calling the real-life Gone Girl case. And there's even a Lifetime movie called Gone Mom about Jennifer and her husband Fotis and the other woman, Michelle Troconis. Now, Michelle's trial is set to begin Thursday, January 11th, after more than 4.5 years. This video is a crash course for everything that you need to know going into this trial. So let's get started. So Jennifer Farber Dulos was born as Jennifer Farber, and she was born into generational wealth. She's the daughter of Hilliard Farber, who is a philanthropist and also a Wall Street titan who became the youngest senior VP in the history of Chase Manhattan Bank. He also owns his own brokerage, Hilliard Farber and Company. Now, Jennifer's aunt is Liz Claiborne, who, along with Jennifer's uncle, founded the billion-dollar design firm Liz Claiborne. She was born in New York City. She's incredibly smart, graduated from Brown University in Rhode Island, and then went on to get her master's in writing from NYU. Now, Jennifer loved to write. It's something that gave her passion and purpose as opposed to just living off of her trust fund. She dedicated herself to her writing and also co-founded a theater company in the 90s. While at Brown, Jennifer met this guy. This is Fotis Dulos. Fotis was born in Turkey, but he was raised in Athens, Greece, and he later moved to the States to go to college. Now, he graduated from Brown the year before Jennifer, and he went on to get his master's in finance from Columbia Business School. Jennifer and Fotis didn't date in college, though, but she did write in her blog that they had a special chemistry. Years later, after a chance run-in at an Aspen airport in 2003, Fotis and Jennifer reconnected, and she said that lightning finally struck. Fotis was married at the time, but his divorce was finalized in 2004, and 1 month later, he and Jennifer got married in a swanky wedding at the Metropolitan Club in Manhattan near the Upper East Side. Reconnecting with Fotis is something that Jennifer writes about later in her blog, and they celebrate the date of that first email that he sent after they reconnected. 2004 was a busy year for Fotis. Along with his divorce and then his marriage to Jennifer, he also founded a luxury real estate development company with the financial help of Jennifer's parents. Fotis's company was set up to basically buy land, build these huge mega mansion spec homes, and then sell them. Jennifer's parents would front the money for the land and the construction, and then Fotis would pay them back with interest when the house sold. Jennifer and Fotis moved to Farmington, Connecticut, and lived in this 10,000 square foot, 6-bedroom house. They started a family in 2006 with their first set of twins, 2 boys. They had another set of twins, 1 boy and 1 girl, and then 1 final daughter to complete the bunch. Jennifer was incredibly involved with her children. They always had something going on, whether it was music classes, horseback riding lessons, ballet, or water skiing. And being an involved mom of 5 kept her incredibly busy. She wrote essays for her local patch and also began her own blog called And 5 Makes 7 as a way to continue making money through a creative outlet while still being devoted full-time to her family. She described the blog as a mother of 5 in Connecticut who writes to her children as a way of capturing this moment in time. Now, I looked up the blog and I was reading some of them, and she writes really beautifully. Anything from an appreciation post for something as simple as her pillow and laying her head down at night, or all the way to the complexities of human nature and internal struggles. And it's easy to see she's a smart cookie. From the outside, they may have seemed like they had the picture-perfect family, but the marriage between Jennifer and Fotis had become increasingly more difficult. Fotis had a temper, and he was incredibly controlling. Jennifer's longtime nanny and friend Lauren actually gave a police interview after the disappearance and described an incident where Fotis had tried to run Jennifer over. She also saw Fotis chasing Jennifer around the house before, forcing her to run and barricade herself in the room. She said that Fotis didn't even seem to really calm down until he realized that Lauren and one or multiple of their children were in the room and saw the whole thing. Jennifer said that his control issues also extended to their children. Fotis was really into water skiing. Jennifer actually labeled it as an obsession. She said that he even put their children on an incredibly strict training regimen that she said was excessive and dangerous because he insisted on them becoming world-class skiers just like him. She said that the training sessions would sometimes go from 8 in the morning until 7 at night. Jennifer said that it was miserable for their kids and that they begged her for help, but she said that they were all terrified to disobey him. Court documents also say that Fotis would lose his temper when the kids didn't comply, and Jennifer said that once he threw a ski against a rock, breaking it in a fit of anger, and she said that there was a time when he lost his temper with her for scheduling things with the kids on a Saturday, which he thought should be spent just training. She said that he got within inches of her face and berated her. Fotis himself is an international water ski champion, and he spent a lot of time training with his kids, but he also traveled with them to compete with their ski club. It was one of these trips that brought him to Miami, where he met 42-year-old Michelle Troconis. Michelle is originally from Venezuela. Her father is a cardiac surgeon, and she is a single mom. Her ex owns a ski resort, and she became a TV host and producer with ESPN in Argentina. Michelle was incredibly athletic and active, and she loved to do all of the same things that Fotis did. Like Fotis, she was also a competitive skier. It didn't take long for them to begin an affair. According to divorce documents, Jennifer learned about her husband's affair in March of 2017 and confronted him. 3 months later, she took the kids and left without letting him know first. Now, at this point, things had progressed to a very dangerous level between Jennifer and Fotis. So, in an acrimonious situation, a victim of domestic abuse is often in the most danger when they tell their spouse that they're leaving and it's final. So, it was probably the safest way for her to get out. But Fotis wasn't happy about it. When Jennifer and the kids weren't home, he called 911 to report them missing.
Remington 911, what's the location of your emergency?
I'm worried about my wife and kids because they left to go to New York, and I haven't been able to get in touch with them.
Okay.
The very next day, Jennifer filed for divorce, marking the beginning of a bitter divorce and custody battle that would drag on for the next 2 years until she went missing. Now, these divorce and custody documents, they get dirty, y'all. Jennifer's very clear about her fear based on the behavior of Fotis. She moved about 70 miles away to New Canaan, where she rented a nice house for her and the kids. She hired movers. However, they later told Fox 61 that Fotis had blocked them multiple times from entering the home to get her things. She eventually had to ask them to not wear uniforms and to go in an unmarked vehicle. Jennifer said that she was afraid of her husband, and in an affidavit filed in June of 2017, she said, quote, "I know that filing for divorce and filing this motion will enrage him. I know that he will retaliate by trying to harm me in some way. He has the attitude that he must always win at all costs. He's dangerous and ruthless when he believes that he has been wronged. During the course of our marriage, he told me about sickening revenge fantasies and plans to cause physical harm to others who have wronged him. For example, flying a plane over an ex-client's home and dropping a brick on his house. I fear for my family's safety, and I believe him to be highly capable and vengeful enough to take the children and disappear." End quote. Jennifer also said that she grew increasingly afraid of her husband after he purchased a handgun about 2 years ago. She said she was terrified for her family's safety, especially since discovering the gun, since she said that her husband had a history of controlling, volatile, and delusional behavior. She goes on to say that Fotis exhibited, quote, irrational, unsafe, bullying, threatening, and controlling behavior, end quote. And she said that she was afraid for her safety and the physical and emotional well-being of their minor children. Jennifer also filed an emergency motion for sole physical custody of the kids, stating that Fotis had threatened to kidnap the children and take them to his native Greece or somewhere else. He told Jennifer, "You will never find us," according to the document. Now, Jennifer said that Fotis applied for Greek passports for himself and their children, and he even scheduled an interview with the Greek consulate in New York City. But worrying about Fotis taking the kids isn't the only reason that Jennifer filed emergency sole physical custody. The excessive training regimen and his temper also worried her, and she didn't trust him alone with the kids. So Fotis's response to all of the claims made by Jennifer was basically that none of it was true. He said that it was Jennifer who was unfit to be the sole parent. He denied that he had ever threatened to kidnap the children, and he said that actually it was Jennifer who left with them, taking them to New Canaan without telling him. He said that Jennifer, on more than one occasion, lost one of the children, including once on a trip to London. He said that her use of antidepressants made her unfit to be the sole custodial parent, and he said that the gun that she mentioned was turned into Farmington police in 2017. The emergency relief motion for full custody was denied. It was the court's decision that it wasn't established that there was an immediate and present risk of physical danger or psychological harm to the children. In the court agreement, it stated that Jennifer would move into her parents' home in Pound Ridge, New York, and enroll the kids in private school in New Canaan. Jennifer ended up renting this house in New Canaan, 70 miles away from the Farmington house where Fotis remained living. Now, it was June of 2017 when Jennifer left Fotis and filed for divorce. The decision denying sole custody was July of 2017. And it was only 1 month later, in August, when Jennifer filed what would be the first of many motions for contempt against him. She said that Fotis almost hit her with a Suburban in the driveway when he was picking up their children, and that he accelerated and swerved at the last minute to avoid hitting her, but their children apparently saw the whole thing. She said that Fotis immediately told her after this that she should be locked away and asked her, "Why don't you pop another pill?" He told her that she was insane, that she should be put in an insane asylum. He said that she's an unfit mother and warned her that he can do whatever he wants since she doesn't have a restraining order against him. Now, Jennifer wasn't the only one filing contempt motions. Fotis filed some against her as well, claiming that she was trying to alienate the children from him because she would schedule activities that weren't essential during his time with them. He also said that she was disparaging him to their children and claimed that she told them that he didn't work enough to make more money, that he's a psychopath, and that she would tell them that your father doesn't care about you. The battle raged on, and in January of 2018, Jennifer again requested emergency custody. In his response, Fotis claimed that Jennifer had bragged to their kids that she could have their dad hurt and even have the mafia break his legs with a baseball bat. The judge said that there's no credible evidence to support that, and in fact said that all evidence points to him making the whole thing up. A judge found that Fotis not only lied to the court, but that he was also pressuring his children to lie in order to get his way in court. A guardian ad litem named Michael Meehan was appointed to represent the best interest of the children, and Meehan then hired a psychiatrist to meet with the children, and the psychiatrist determined that Fotis's actions constituted emotional abuse. The judge also said that the defendant does not seem to appreciate in any respect the consequences of lying under oath and willfully violating a court order. His facility in testifying falsely to the court suggests that he is equally comfortable in encouraging the children to lie to achieve his desired outcome. Believing that the children could be in psychological and physical danger if allowed unrestricted and unsupervised visitations, full physical custody was eventually granted to Jennifer in March of 2018, about 9 months after their split. Fotis was restricted to supervised visits and monitored phone calls on speakerphone. The motions and arguments continue on. Fotis says that Jennifer changed the kids' pediatrician and signed one of them up for hockey, all without telling him. Jennifer says that Fotis doesn't give the kids a proper bedtime and that he continually allows them to be around Michelle, which is something that the court specifically forbade. Now, on May 8th of 2019, just 2 weeks before her disappearance, Jennifer files another motion for contempt. In this one, she says that Fotis filed improper and misleading financial affidavits in an attempt to hide the true value of his business. Going through this divorce reminds me of the divorce binder that we saw with Wendy Adelson's divorce from Dan Markell. There are almost 600 motions, pleadings, and documents in this case detail. I mean, it goes on and on and on. Aside from the emergency custody requests, there are motions to transfer venue, motions and objections to psychological evaluations, motions for child support, alimony, educational evaluations, holiday schedules, protective orders, and for romantic partners. Once Jennifer had moved out, Fotis moved Mistress Michelle and her daughter right on into the family home that he had shared with his wife and children. Now, as if we haven't been through enough court filings, messy Mistress Michelle is mentioned in motions. The court documents say that when Jennifer told Fotis that she was leaving him, he, quote, informed me that our children and I will continue to reside in the marital home every weekend and during the summer so that we all, his paramour and her daughter included, would be together, end quote. Now, I'm no family and relationship expert, but telling that your wife that you're going to force her and your kids to be in a home with your mistress and her kids doesn't seem like the recipe for one big happy family. But the court apparently agreed with me on this one, even though I'm not an expert, and in a later court order wrote, quote, in view of the close bond among all 5 children, the court finds it highly likely that all 5 of the children have been adversely impacted by the breakdown of their parents' marriage, the defendant's relationship with Troconis, and the pressure that the defendant has placed on them to lie, end quote. Now, it sounds like old Fotis had his hands full trying to juggle a wife, 5 children, a mistress, her daughter, divorce, and custody battles, but it doesn't end there. Jennifer's father, Hilliard Farber, had died in 2017. Now, remember I said that he's a well-known philanthropist and banker, and he owned his own brokerage firm. His wife, Jennifer's mom, Gloria Farber, was also in court battles with Fotis. Like I mentioned earlier, Jennifer's parents helped finance Fotis's company by fronting the money to build the spec homes that he would then pay them when they sold. Now, one lawsuit claims that Fotis didn't pay back this money, and another lawsuit said that he also didn't pay back the money that he and Jennifer used to purchase their home in Farmington. So I wonder if he told the messy mistress, Michelle, that he never paid back Jennifer's parents for the house that he moved her into. So Fotis filed a response arguing that any money given to him by Hilliard Farber was a gift, not a loan. But I pulled the court docs, and it's plain as day that he's lying again. Shocker. A revised complaint was filed by Gloria's attorneys stating that Fotis had borrowed $2.3 million from a bank to buy his home in Farmington that he was supposed to make payments on. Jennifer's parents were going to put up the security for the loan. He defaulted, and he failed to make payments on the loan, which cost Gloria the collateral. In yet another lawsuit, Gloria, along with her husband's estate, are suing Fotis and his company because she says that Hilliard loaned money to Fotis for his company dating all the way back to 2004 and for the purchase of these properties that they say he still owes somewhere between $1 million to $1.5 million on this loan. Now, again, Fotis says that was all a gift. So everything is kind of boiling over at this point. Fotis is going through bitter custody battles, and he's been denied custody and has yet again been denied unsupervised visits. The divorce proceedings continue with no end in sight, and he's having all kinds of issues there because he's hiding company values and falsifying information. He's being sued for a ton of money by his soon-to-be former mother-in-law for what he owes them, and bank records show that he was getting cash advances and checks that were made out to him and Jennifer, but only he was signing them and depositing them in the account. His debt was increasing significantly, somewhere around $7 million, and he was defaulting on loans. So Fotis ain't doing so hot. So that brings us to May 24th, the Friday before Memorial Day. Jennifer had a busy day ahead. The plan was to get the kids ready and drop them off at New Canaan Country School, less than a mile away, go home, get ready, and head to New York City for a doctor's appointment at 11, another one at 1, and the appointment for the kids at 4:40 p.m. at the orthodontist. So Jennifer drops the kids off. She's seen on the neighbor's cameras arriving back home about 8:05, pulls in the driveway, goes in the garage, and is never seen alive again. So Jennifer's longtime nanny and friend, Lauren, told police that she showed up at the house about 11:30, but Jennifer wasn't home. She noticed that the Range Rover that Jennifer usually drove to the city was still in the house and the Suburban was missing. Now, she knows her friend well enough to know that she isn't going to drive a big Suburban into the city for doctor's appointments. It's too big, too hard to park. It's going to be too hard to navigate down the narrow streets. She's just not going to take that. So Lauren also noticed that Jennifer's handbag was on the floor in between the mudroom and the kitchen. And she saw there was an unopened granola bar and a mug of tea on the kitchen counter. Also, the mudroom door, she said, was unlocked, and she noticed that only 2 rolls of paper towels were in the pantry. That was weird because she knows that the night before they had bought a 12-pack. She wasn't too alarmed yet. She said that she washed the mug, she went and picked the kids up from school since they were let out early for the holiday weekend, and then she went and made them lunch. Now, after a while, Lauren starts to get concerned because Jennifer isn't answering her text, and she missed the orthodontist appointment that was scheduled for the kids, which was really unlike her. She began to contact Jennifer's friends and family, and nobody had heard from her. Around 7 o'clock, Lauren and Jennifer's friend Laurel reported her missing, telling police that she was going through a divorce with a man who has threatened her in the past and owns a gun. So after receiving the missing persons report, a search begins, and they find Jennifer's missing Suburban pretty quickly, right around 7 p.m. near Wavenley Park, about 3 miles away. The running lights were on, the transmission was left in reverse, and there was nobody in or around the car, but they did see stain spatter on the passenger side of the interior. Now, Wavenley Park is pretty huge, so it's about 300 acres, and they fan out, they begin canvassing the area, talking to people, stopping joggers, stopping cars. They have K9 units, the whole thing. But nobody saw anything, and there are no cameras in the park at this point. So detectives go to Jennifer's rental home to see what they can find, and this is where things took a very dark turn. They noticed a blood-like substance in the garage. It looked like blood spatter on the door, the floor of the garage, and the exterior of the car that was left in the garage, and on the faucet in the house. Now, presumptive blood test results were positive for the presence of blood, and of course they took samples to check the DNA, but that doesn't come back right away. Later that night, Jennifer's friend Laurel spoke to Fotis, and she said that he never asked about Jennifer or how she had been the day before or anything like that. She said that he did tell her that the next morning they had an appointment scheduled with the kids for him to have a visitation, and that she needed to make sure that she was up early enough to leave New York City, where the kids were staying with Jennifer's mom, to bring them there so that she's not late, and that this visitation still needs to happen. The following afternoon, Fotis arrives at New Canaan Police Department. He shows up about 3 hours later than he was scheduled, but at least he shows up. The officers that he met with asked about his attorney, who Fotis tells them is outside on the phone. Now, as they're talking, Fotis starts patting his pockets and muttering, "Where's my phone?" And about that time, his attorney walks in and tells police that Fotis won't be doing any interviews, that they were leaving. Now, obviously, this is his wife and the mother of his children that's missing, so they expected him to want to help in locating her. So this kind of surprised them. As the four are going kind of back and forth about all of this, Fotis's attorney hands Fotis the phone that he had been holding, at which point one of the detectives asks Fotis, "Is that your phone?" He confirms that it is, and the detective asks to see it. Fotis handed it over. There seemed to be no hesitation, and he gave him the passcode when he asked. It was 0000, very original. And then the detective immediately put the phone in airplane mode. Now, airplane mode prevents anyone from being able to access the phone or change or delete anything remotely since it's no longer available on the network. Fotis's attorney didn't seem pleased about this, but the detectives told them that they were basically just securing the phone and they would be getting a search and seizure warrant. This seems to agitate Fotis and his attorney, who tells them that they have no grounds to seize it without a warrant, but the detectives let them know that they're basically just securing it now and they are getting the warrant. And when it comes through, that way they'll have the phone and it'll be secured with airplane mode. Now, Fotis's attorney says that he needs a moment to speak to his client, at which point they just leave the lobby. Now, the following day, May 26th, a forensic examination of Fotis's phone shows his location being in the area of Albany Avenue in Hartford around 7 p.m. on the 24th. This is about the time that Jennifer was reported missing. Also on this day, Fotis continued to text Laurel starting at 5:39 in the morning, asking about any news and bringing the kids for a visitation. The next day, he continued his text and he started asking about the kids and if they were all together in the city with Jennifer's mom. He actually even showed up at Jennifer's mom's apartment and demanded entry, but he was denied by the doorman who already had been warned about the ongoing family court issues. Now, Fotis at this point actually called the police and said that the kids had been abducted and he was demanding to see them. The police were able to verify that he was prevented by court order from visiting them unsupervised, so he was told to leave the property immediately. Jennifer's friend Carrie actually even filed a domestic violence report about this whole incident. He texted her again the next day, telling her to send him updates every 3 hours of the children, but he still didn't ask anything about Jennifer. Now, I don't know how many of you have seen the show See No Evil. It's a great show, but it's incredibly interesting because it shows how they solve cases using CCTV and video footage. Some of it is wild, y'all. I even saw an episode where they solved a murder based on a camera picking up a reflection in a window that you could barely see. It's amazing what's caught on camera in public these days. The rest of the investigation would make a great episode of that show because CCTV did a great job at following the movements of Fotis and Mistress Michelle after Jennifer's bloody disappearance. Now, detectives used Fotis' cell phone location data to find out the general areas that he was in that day and that evening, and they found a route along the way in Hartford that it's Albany Avenue in Hartford. And on May 27th, detectives began to video canvass the area along Albany Avenue, and they see the Ford Raptor truck that was listed as a registered vehicle to Fotis' company. Now, they contact on May 30th Capital City Command Center, which uses a comprehensive surveillance system that was developed to help tie all of the crime-busting technology systems together in order to expedite the flow of information to first responders. So it includes license plate readers and high-definition security cameras from around the city, even from private businesses and residences, and they have shot spotter systems and even monitoring social media for inflammatory language to head off threats and all that stuff. So it's crazy how much they do, but buddy, it works. So they find the footage of Fotis in his truck driving along Albany Avenue in Hartford, making multiple stops along the way. Between 7:30 and 7:50 p.m., he can be seen stopping at multiple trash bins along the way, getting out and placing black trash bags and other items, including the missing rear cargo liner from Jennifer's Suburban and a camping pillow that was listed by Jennifer's friend as missing from the garage. The camera angles show toward the end of his trip that the trash bags have all now been emptied from the back of his truck. In one camera shot, they see Mistress Michelle leaning out of the passenger seat and reaching down to the sidewalk. So with the help of the fast information from the command center, police are able to recover a lot of what was still in the bins, and they also went to the dump where the other bins had already been disposed of. Among what was recovered were blood-stained cleaning items, sponges, used zip ties with human blood, 2 ponchos covered in Jennifer's blood, and clothing in Jennifer's size. Now, these things were all tested, and the DNA did match Jennifer Dulos. Also, a black garden glove having Fotis' DNA inside of it. There was also pieces of black bag with duct tape that had his fingerprints on it. His DNA was present on a swabbing of a bag opening and a separate bag portion. Also present was Michelle Troconis' DNA on 2 plastic garbage bags that were taped together and the swabbing of the bag opening and the separate bag portion. So obviously, the victim's blood and the 2 suspects' DNA. Not a good look. So the forensic results also come back for the items inside the house that were tested. Some of it is no surprise. The blood-like substance on the hood, the bumper, and the fender of the Range Rover are all belonging to Jennifer. The blood on the garage wall, garage door, and sink cabinet door also match Jennifer. But the big find here is that the blood on the kitchen sink faucet is a mixture of Jennifer and Fotis. And the DNA gathered from the inside doorknob in the mudroom also belongs to Fotis. So the security footage also showed Fotis putting a white FedEx envelope into a storm drain at the intersection of Albany Avenue and Adams Street. Now, they were able to go to the storm drain and recovered the envelope, and inside of it found 2 Connecticut license plates that had been altered using blue tape and adhesive in order to change the plate numbers. When they ran the unaltered plate numbers, they came back to a car that had belonged to, of course, Fotis. So police begin to compile all of the information and footage that they have, and they conduct various police interviews, and this is the timeline of what they're able to find. So the day before Jennifer went missing, Fotis took possession of a red Toyota Tacoma that belonged to Powell Gumiani. I'm probably saying that wrong. He was a project manager that had worked for him since 2016. Now, Powell would normally drive his Tacoma to work at Fotis's home office and then take one of the company cars to drive during the day. So this particular morning, however, Fotis had told Powell that he had a meeting with his divorce attorney, and he said, "Don't bother coming here, just go straight to work." So he had given him the Raptor to drive the night before. Now, Friday morning, the morning of Jennifer's disappearance, footage captures Fotis leaving in the Tacoma at 5:35 a.m., and various cameras catch him on the way toward Jennifer's house, where he then parks near Waveney Park, right by where the Suburban was later found. And cameras also see a person riding a bike in all dark clothing with a hood pulled down to hide their face. Now, this is about 7:30 a.m., and where this biker is spotted is right along the route that it would be for him to bike from the Tacoma to Jennifer's house. The bike is also dark. It's like a dark colored touring bike with the curled ram horn handlebars that are very common in vintage 10-speed bikes, and it just so happens that Fotis has one of those. So at 8:05, Jennifer's Suburban is shown on footage on her road after dropping her kids off at school. Now, the police believe that Fotis had parked the Tacoma, biked to Jennifer's house, waited on her to get home, and it was this point where he basically killed his wife. He used zip ties to bind her, placed her inside of her own Suburban while he cleaned the garage using supplies that he found in the garage and paper towels from the kitchen. The Suburban is seen leaving on the neighbor's camera, and it's about 10:25. So they believe that Fotis was driving and Jennifer was already dead, and that Fotis had put his bike in the back of the Suburban. He got to the Tacoma, moved Jennifer's body over to the Tacoma, and then put the Suburban in reverse and let it go where it was found about 100 feet away. He's then seen going back toward the house. Now, you can see the bike tire in the back of the truck in some of the camera shots too. He returns to the house that they're working on at Mountain Springs Road at 12:22, and that's about the time he calls Michelle. So for the next few hours, surveillance video shows that there's a lot of driving back and forth from the Mountain Spring house toward their house, just a lot of back and forth. And you can see there's Michelle driving the Jeep. Sometimes they're driving the Suburban, sometimes they're driving the Tacoma. There's just a lot of back and forth. So about 2:00, the Jeep with Michelle pulls in, coming from the direction of the house, and then it leaves again going back towards the house about 20 minutes later, and then returns again about 3:55. It's a lot of back and forth. But now at 4:03, Michelle is seen in the Suburban with the rack, the one that he has, leaving the Mountain Spring house where they had been working. 20 minutes later, the Suburban returns, but both Michelle and Fotis's phones show that their location is at home, not at the Mountain Spring house. Now, Powell, during this time, he had gone to Fotis's house, because that's where the home office is, about 4:30, and nobody was there. He called Fotis, but nobody answered. So he looked for the spot where his Tacoma key is usually hidden and kept for him to pick up his own truck, but it wasn't there either. So he then drove to the location at Deer Cliff Road and then ended up going to the Mountain Spring house, where he said that he finally found Michelle and Fotis. He said that when he pulled up, they looked really shocked to see him. Now, they told him that they were there cleaning, but he did notice that they not only weren't holding any cleaning products, but they didn't have any cleaning products anywhere around them. They were both outside in the driveway near their cars, and there were no cleaning products in the cars, in their hands, or anywhere around them. So at this point, it's the end of the week. It's a holiday weekend. Powell is ready to just get his Tacoma and go home. He's got plans. He wants to take his dirt bike, and he's got all kinds of things to do. But it's not that easy. There's still a lot of back and forth. So right after the last footage, the next footage that we see is Michelle backing out of the driveway in the Jeep, and she stops. Then Fotis pulls to the end of this driveway in the Suburban, and it seems like they're kind of communicating back and forth for about 10 to 15 seconds, and then they drive home. Now, the back and forth still isn't over yet, because at 5:14, Fotis pulls back into the Mountain Spring Road house with Powell as the passenger. Now, according to police, Powell was planning on leaving his Tacoma, but he said that he only had one key. They had the key earlier that was in the passenger door, and now all of a sudden it was gone. So Fotis was like, hey, just take the Raptor for the weekend. No big deal. But like I said, Powell had plans. He wanted his own truck because he was going to be transporting his dirt bike over the holiday weekend. So Fotis calls Michelle and he tells her to return the key to the Tacoma. Now, she is seen bringing them in the Suburban to the Mountain Spring house just minutes later. And then Michelle leaves in the Suburban, followed by Powell in his Tacoma. And then Fotis pulls out in his Raptor. This is all right around 5:30. So Powell and Michelle and Fotis all leave that house about 5:30. Now, it's only about 2 hours later, around 7:30, between 7:30 to 7:50, that footage shows Michelle and Fotis driving along Albany Avenue as they're disposing of all of these trash bags and all of these items. Now, Powell says that over the weekend, he talked to Fotis one time and told him, he would be in on Tuesday because it was a holiday weekend, so they weren't going to be working Monday. He said that when he came in Tuesday, the first thing that Fotis asked him was, where were you on Friday? Now, he had talked to Fotis over the weekend, and Fotis had told him that Jennifer was missing. He thought it was really strange that Fotis was asking him, where were you Friday? Because he said he knew where I was Friday because I was working. He is the one who assigned me where to work. He knew everything that he was doing. Fotis also told Powell that day that police took his phone, and he asked to see Powell's phone because he said that he needed to check to see if he had called him during the early part of Friday. He said that as Fotis looked through his phone, he asked him how he had gotten back to the office on Friday. As he was recalling the events that happened, he said that he brought up to Fotis about Fotis calling Michelle to come bring the Tacoma key back, which at that point, he said that Fotis told him that there was no reason to bring Michelle into it, to leave that part out. He said that he understood that as Fotis telling him, do not tell the police that Michelle had the Tacoma key. Powell said that after that whole conversation, he went to his truck to get a toolbox, and he said that he saw a red pail and a blue hoodie inside of it. He said he didn't recognize the hoodie or the pail, and he just assumed that they were Fotis's. So he said that he brought them in and he left them in the laundry room, and then he went to work for the day. Now, I think it's important to note that there were 3 long interviews that Powell did with the police. Each of them were about 8 hours. On the third one, he brought a defense attorney. And all of the information that I'm about to give you next, I think, is why. So on Wednesday, which is the 29th, Powell said that he went to go get his truck and it wasn't parked where he had left it at Fotis's home, where their office was. He said that he called Fotis, and Fotis was like, oh yeah, I'm coming back with the truck right now from the car wash. When he arrived back, Fotis told him that he should replace the seats or sell the entire truck. Now, there is footage of this car wash situation because they were able to find video footage of this car wash. They actually see Fotis and Michelle taking Powell's Tacoma to Russell Speeder's car wash in Avon to have it detailed. Now, Fotis drives the truck and Michelle follows in the Yukon, and they can be seen on footage around 9 o'clock in the morning. So Fotis walks in, he speaks to somebody in the lobby, and on the detail log sheet, he actually leaves the name blank, but he does put his phone number down for them to contact him when it's ready. So he leaves, he's seen getting into the car with Michelle, and they go to Michelle's attorney's office, Andrew Bowman. The car wash actually calls him about 1:39, and almost an hour later, he picks up the Tacoma and he pays cash, which he was also seen in video surveillance getting out of the bank ATM. The Tacoma was seized by police on June 6th, and Powell tells detectives that the seats that were in there are different than the seats that were in the truck on the 24th. And he provides the seats that were in the truck on that day. And sure enough, Jennifer's blood was on the passenger seat. At some point that week, Fotis calls and tells Powell that the media were at his house and he needed to come get the Tacoma and park it in the garage or take it home. It was like he didn't want the media to see that truck. Now, that Thursday, on the 30th, Fotis told him to go get a replacement seat from a junkyard and pay cash for it. He said he also didn't want him in future phone conversations to use the word seats or refer to them as seats. He said instead he needed to use the code hardware. The next day, Pella said he spent 2 hours at a junkyard with no luck. Fotis called and asked how the, quote, hardware was, and he said that he was working on it. Now, when he got back to the office, he said that Fotis seemed pretty angry that he couldn't find seats, and he said that he seemed so firm about it. So he asked him why it's so important that he replace the seats, but Fotis just said, don't worry about it, nothing happened. He said that he pushed him a little bit more about why he had the truck detailed and why he wants the seats changed. And he said that Fotis finally told him that he went to Jennifer's on Mother's Day. He had given Jennifer a hug and had also held their cat during the visit. So he said that he was worried that one of Jennifer's hairs could be found in the Tacoma. He said he told him to get rid of the seats so that, quote, no one would ever find them, end quote. Pella said that he removed the seats from Fotis's wrecked Porsche and he ended up putting those in the Tacoma. But he said that he was suspicious. So instead of getting rid of them, he said that he kept them in his garage just in case police ever wanted to take them. Sure enough, during the search of his house, he did offer up the seats without even being prompted. He also was able to identify his truck to police in the surveillance by pointing out certain things, including a handmade plow mount. Now, he also volunteered his cell phone, and it showed some items had been deleted. He says he didn't delete anything, and police noted that Fotis had possession of Powell's phone on that Tuesday after the weekend, and he could have deleted things then. The entire web history had been deleted, and the first available non-deleted day was May 30th, which was the day after Fotis had his phone. Also, searches from April 2nd through May 27th were deleted, but nothing from May 30th forward. So nothing from the time that he got his phone back from Fotis forward. And the call log from May 25th through May 26th at 7:39 p.m. was all deleted as well. There were some other interviews that turned up some interesting stuff too. So apparently Michelle and Fotis had shown up to a barbecue at a pond owned by their friend Hutch Haynes. Now Hutch tells them it might not be appropriate for y'all to be here since Jennifer just went missing. Maybe y'all should head on home. Fotis isn't one to be told what to do though, so he stayed there anyway. Another friend, Dana Hinman, was there and told police that she asked Fotis where Jennifer was. His response was apparently to just talk about the $15,000 in medical bills that she had accrued. Good answer. At one point, Hutch apparently mentioned something about breaking news on his phone that detectives were in Hartford along Albany Avenue finding trash bags possibly related to the case, at which point he said Fotis apparently watched the story on his phone and eventually looked up at Michelle and they sort of locked eyes for a moment. Then he walked away and began making calls, which Hutch said he assumed was to his attorney. On June 1st, Michelle and Fotis were both arrested for tampering with or fabricating physical evidence and hindering prosecution in the first degree. Now, normally this is kind of the part where everything is coming to a close or coming together and the case is solved. In this story, this is just the beginning because all of the craziness really starts after the arrest. There are changing stories, there are alibi notes, there are crazy attorneys with crazy stories, and there is suicide. There's a lot that happens between now and the time that brings us to present day when we're finally getting to trial. I'll have all of that in part 2. Thank you so much for watching. Please hit like and don't forget to subscribe so that you don't miss out on part 2 when it comes out. We've still got a lot more to cover before the trial starts on Thursday. Thank you so much. I'll see y'all next time.